Hello and welcome back to Life, Death, and Cookies. Today we are going to do a continuation episode on marriage. Marriage continued. The previous episode we didn't get to finish quite everything that we had wanted to. We were talking about priorities in life, and which our spouse is second in priorities in our list.
After
God.
Okay.
And before our children.
So then, just to recap, that list of priorities goes God, spouse, children, and then everybody else.
And including
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We talked about yourself as a priority comes in through self-control and managing yourself and your own motivations and maintaining that list of priorities.
Yes, and
so yourself kind of permeates all levels, but you don't ever place yourself as your top priority in life.
Yeah, and then your needs, that that self-care comes from your spouse.
Yeah.
Go back and watch the other episode.
Yeah, we're not going to do all that. We already did it.
Yes. We want to have time for the stuff in this episode.
Exactly.
But we do want to cover a little bit on some of those practicalities of how you can put, or some of the things that we've done at least, because there's like a million ways to put your spouse as a priority. One of the things that I've always really appreciated that you initiated for our first anniversary and have done it, I guess, now 22 times, pretty much.
Well, it's 21 times. This year will be 22.
Okay, whatever. Yeah. Yes, we're married.
We lose count.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You've always made, like, our anniversary, like, the biggest day of the year. Even, I would say even, maybe not bigger than Christmas, even though you don't.
I try to make it bigger than Christmas.
Yeah.
It's just always, I don't know, sometimes it's hard because we don't really have a lot of money.
Yeah.
There are challenges, many of them financial, with making our anniversary the biggest day of the year.
But I still know that it's a priority for you.
Right.
Even though we have financial difficulties, you make it a priority that we do something if we can.
And it's always something more than, hey, I heard that there's a nice-ish restaurant. We'll just go out for dinner. Maybe see a movie. I'm sorry, you guys can do your anniversaries however you want. Get your wife flowers, take her to dinner, maybe a show or something. Not good enough. Not good enough for an anniversary, not in my book. Every year that we can afford it, we try to go on a trip somewhere, or at least get one night, if not a few nights, in a hotel, somewhere where we can get rid of the kids and just be the two of us together, just spend some time together. We don't necessarily always do gifts. The gift is the time together and the trip and everything else.
Yeah.
Right? And we do make sure that we eat out somewhere nice. And I would recommend, now, I know maybe everybody isn't into the high dining type stuff. Go and eat at some place where you're going to get 5 courses that are all like really pretty small and everything is very fancy and very nice and very expensive. And I understand people's arguments against that sort of thing. It seems too frivolous, seems too expensive, blah, 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 blah. Right. But it's an experience. And it's not your everyday kind of experience. I would make it a priority to do that at least once. And I think we did that for, what was our second anniversary?
Yeah.
Went to eat at a place in California. It was on the Relais Chateaux list, which is another group similar to the Micheline star rating system. So this place is not Michelin starred because Relais Chateaux, if you get listed with them, then you also sign an agreement saying you're not going to get listed with somebody else. And just to throw in a little plug for Relais Chateaux, right? We have no sponsorship agreement with them, but one of these top Michelin-starred restaurants that everybody knows about is the French Laundry in Napa, right? And Thomas Keller is a world-renowned chef, one of the top chefs in the world, absolutely amazing chef. And I've never been to the French Laundry. Everything I've ever heard about it is that it is top notch, right? Well, I checked just a little while back, and I was surprised to find that I didn't find them on the Michelin guide. So I looked. They're listed with Relais Chateaux now. Maybe that should tell you something about being listed with Relais Chateaux, because that takes a conscious decision from whoever's running the French Laundry, which I believe is still Thomas Keller, right? That takes a conscious decision to say, you know what? We're not going to follow along with this Michelin star thing anymore. We're going to stick with Relais Chateaux from now on. Anyway, we went and ate at a place called Erna's Elderberry House.
I think it's changed the name now. I think it's
The Elderberry House.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know what it is anymore. But it's something similar to all that, but it was amazing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, again, not sponsor, we're not getting paid for this, but even back then, like, I had a hard time with that meal because I was not a fish eater back then. Mm-hmm. But now I wish we could go back and do it because I am now. Oh, and I didn't like the cheese and the cheese course, and I love cheese now. So I've grown a lot in being married to Oliver. I've grown a lot in I've become kind of a food snob. Not as bad as you. Oh. Because I still like, I'll still eat things that you won't eat. Mm-hmm. But yes, I want to go back really bad because I loved it and I would appreciate it even more now. And it was like a 3-hour. So we paid, I think it was back then, it was $80 a person.
Well, when we added on the cheese course.
Yeah.
And when we added that on, it was about $100
yes.
Per person.
That was an extra course.
Then we added a tip onto that, of course. We spent a lot of money on this meal. But we were sitting there eating for, like you said, about 3 hours.
It was an experience.
And we each had our own waiter.
Yes, and our menu was personalized.
We had personalized menus.
I scrapbooked our menu.
Everything was about as perfect as you could imagine. I mean, you want to know what it feels like to be royalty? Go to a place like that, and you're going to feel like you're royalty.
Because we've gone to one other place. So that place, you didn't get to choose your menu. You could call them ahead of time and say, oh, yeah, I have allergies or whatever.
Right.
But they serve pretty much everyone the same thing.
Yeah, it was a pre-fee menu.
And we've been to one other place like that before in San Diego. And I don't know if it was only pre-fee, but we got their pre-fee menu. Mm-hmm. And that was not even in the same neighborhood as Erna's Elderberry House.
Yeah, Erna's Elderberry House was something else.
We did one in France, and that one was cool, though. I don't remember a lot about that one. We did that with some friends. We did a nice meal, but...
We've been to some nice places.
Maybe we need to do some sort of nice episode like that, because we're taking a lot of time on this.
Right. And we've done some cool trips. We did a little European trip for our anniversary when we lived in England. We went to Mexico for our 15th anniversary. We've had some cool experiences with anniversaries. But the point is that we place our anniversary as a real priority. And that's one of those ways, kind of those outward demonstrations of placing your marriage as a top priority. There's an internal placing of priorities, but there's an external manifestation of that as well. And you make sacrifices for the things that are most important. Make a sacrifice to make your anniversary something that is really special, something that just is not something that is part of what you normally do.
Yeah.
That goes beyond dinner and flowers and maybe a movie or a show or something else. If your wife likes
flowers, do the flowers,
right.
Though. I'm not a flower person.
I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm saying go beyond them.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you are the type of person where it's like, oh, crap, well, today is my anniversary, I guess I gotta go get my wife some flowers, and I didn't even realize that it was my anniversary. You probably need to work on all of this. You probably need to work on maybe setting your spouse and your marriage as a higher priority in life. I don't know. That's just my thought.
You might start with your next anniversary coming up planning something, because I know, well, you told me for our 15-year anniversary you were going to plan it, but you didn't, like, usually we do it together, but that one you're like, no, you did surprise me for that one.
Yeah, I did. We flew to Mexico, and I didn't let you see where we were flying. I didn't let you see anything. I managed to get you on the plane not having a clue where we were going. I managed to get you to even like close or cover your eyes or whatever until we got to the hotel. And then it was at that moment that it was like, we're in Mexico.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I would suggest, if you aren't a person that does, maybe this next one, like, plan something like, I mean, of course you have to say, okay, you need to block out these dates, or, you know, if you have a job, you need to get a babysitter, whatever, but go, like, do something like that. Like, that. Yeah. There's been a couple times you've surprised me with things, and they're really memorable to me, and just, you know, help me to know that I am a priority to you and that you care, and, you know, and you don't waste money on flowers, because I think that's a waste of money, and you know that about me. So, but if your wife or your spouse, you know, whatever that is, you know, you'll learn what that is, and
do something that really prioritizes your anniversary as well. Dates. So, you know, same with anniversary. We haven't always had the money to go and do anything great. Or really outstanding. We don't always have the money to really do much of anything for dates.
Yeah, in fact, I think with our dates, other people might look at us and be like, oh yeah, you guys never go on dates. For most of our marriage, we would just, Saturday night, we'd send the kids to bed early.
Yeah, I guess what everybody calls Netflix and chill.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And that's cool. You know, when you can't afford anything other than to Netflix and chill, or Hulu and chill, or Disney Plus and chill, I know, YouTube and chill, I could keep going. When you can afford to do something more than that, do something more than that, okay? Sometimes it's good to just send the kids off to bed early, and then you just get some time to spend together. The point of dating, though, is to spend time together.
Well, and some other things that we've done, I know we're spending too much time on this. Like I said, maybe we need a third episode, because I think some of this is important to talk about. Like, you know, another thing about the money thing is, like, when we did these anniversary things, we never had our family around. So, same with dates. So for getting babysitters can be expensive. So we would do things like send them to bed early, and sometimes we would make like special treats too, to try and make it better. But another thing is finding other couples that you can switch babysitting with. Yeah. You know, then you're both, you know, and it helped when we were in the military. We had people that were in the same boat as us, so it's like they don't have their family around either. Then again, you know, not everyone's in our situation, and take the time to go out and do something. You a lot of times do just want to go do the movie thing, dinner and a movie, and that's fine.
Well,
and
I like dinner and I like movies.
Yes.
And you like dinner, and I know, do you like movies?
I do. I don't like movies as much as you. Okay. But I do like to just, it's nice.
But when we've had opportunities and it wasn't too expensive, we've also gone and done like see a play if there's something.
Yes. Oh,
and that's more of what you enjoy, right? The live entertainment stuff. So we've done some other things like that. Just sometimes a movie is easier and cheaper. And
yeah. And you've always you donate blood and you get like.
Yeah. I've been donating blood like since we got married, pretty much. So sometimes with donating blood, they'll give you rewards that come in the form of like free movie tickets or whatever else. And so
there's ways around that. If you really have to take your nursing baby, we have done that a handful of times, not very often, but usually I pumped so that I can leave my kids. I like to leave them with you. Yeah. So, anyway, priorities.
The main thing with all of this is whatever it is that you do, be intentional, right? None of this stuff just happens on its own. None of it just comes naturally. It all takes effort, and there is a high degree of intentionality that is required to make any of this happen at all. If you want your marriage to become something special, to become something better than normal, bland, mundane, whatever, right? It takes a high degree of intentionality. You have to make it that way. It won't just be that way. And for anybody who's, newlywed or just getting married, or maybe you're engaged or something, there's no living happily ever after that just, boom, happens. Hey, we're married now. Awesome. Everything's great. It doesn't work that way. You need to be intentional, and you have to act with purpose in your marriage.
With this intentional thing, the natural way is to be selfish. Remember, we talked about priorities. Right. So you have to be intentional to get out of yourself and put your spouse, well, God first too. You have to be intentional in everything that you do, or life will just happen to you. Right.
And, you talked about these, the surprises and stuff like that, right? I'll be honest, I personally enjoy some of these things, but really the thing that really made me happy was seeing the excitement and the happiness and the joy in the surprise on your face.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing that really means the most to me, is I'm able to do something that brings a true, genuine smile to you, because you really are the thing that, you really are the person. You really are the person who makes me happiest, right? And what makes me happiest is making you as happy as you can be. That takes doing something. It takes going out of yourself and putting away maybe what you would like, because you know what? None of these things, like getting you to Mexico without knowing anything, was not an easy task.
Yeah, because I try to do surprises for you, and I think there's only been once in our marriage that you haven't figured it out.
Anyway, let's keep moving on. And to keep moving on, so we have our daughter Lindy here on audio and video with us today, and we're going to send her away to go have a little walk. So, we're going to talk about sex, basically. Okay? Look, no kid wants to listen to their parents talk about sex.
No.
That's gross.
Probably no one wants to hear us talk about it either.
No kidding. All right, but the point is that part of this thing with being intentional is that one of the aspects of marriage that really is vital is your intimate relationship, and is sex. Intimacy doesn't only come in the form of sexuality, right? It also comes in, if we're watching something together, maybe we hold hands. Mm-hmm. We have a love seat at home that none of the kids sit in. It's just for us, right? Because it allows us to sit next to each other. We always sit next to each other. Mm-hmm. And that's how I like it. I think is that how you like it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm the one that said we needed a love seat.
Okay. So anyway, we've got a place where we sit together all the time. When we go to the store, sometimes we will hold hands. And things like that.
Even in church, we always sit next to each other. And even when we had little kids, I was thinking about it the other day, sitting in church. I'm like, we probably only had maybe 10 times in our whole marriage that, other than when you're deployed or we're not together, but in the same congregation, that we haven't sat next to each other. We made it work, even with toddlers and babies, and that we always sat next to each other.
Right, and we just work with each other and we help each other. But the point right now, we're talking about the physical intimacy part, and that physical intimacy part really is a really important part. Your sexual relationship is not something that's just going to happen.
Oh, no.
Right? And when we got married, you had some ideas and some conceptions, and I had some ideas and some conceptions. We both kind of had to change how we looked at it, how we approached it, and lots of our ideas about it. And it's something that we have had to work on. Without going into any kind of details, I'll just say that, you know, I look back on when we first were married, and I look at where we are now, and I think that we've really learned and grown a lot together. I think it's better now than it ever was before.
Oh, I totally 100% agree with that.
It's something that we have, you know, we've had a lot of open and even long discussions about sex and how we approach that in our marriage. Some of your hang-ups, some of my hang-ups, some of your complaints, some of my complaints. And it's something that we've really worked together on. It's not really about you. It's not really about me. It's about the two of us. And it is really something that is a way for us to come together, right? It really can be one of the most enriching parts of a marriage.
Really, most of our marriage, I've had an issue with, you know, a big percentage have an issue with physical intimacy. And I started actually recently, I don't know how recently, started thinking about, okay, back when we were dating, of course, we were not physically intimate until after we were married. But
right. We were both virgins when we got married.
Yes, that's the right word. But back when we were dating, it was definitely a temptation, right?
Right.
And I'm like, how do I go from that? And then, you know...
Well, you, like what you've said before is, at one moment sex is bad, then the next moment it's not bad anymore.
Well, that didn't mean that I didn't want to do it before.
Right.
But I'm saying, so you get to that point where you're dating and it's all fun and you want to make out all the time, you know, every time we're together, right?
Right.
Where do you go? Like, I got to this point, we've married for 20 years. I'm like, how do you keep that excitement, right? And it really came back, and I was really pondering about this, and I don't know if I even told you this, but, you know, it really comes down to being intentional, and I guess making it more, because, you know, before you're married, when you're saving yourself for marriage, you're like, oh, all this, you know, excitement and stuff. And so basically what I'm saying is you probably need to I had to find a way for me to be like, I want that excitement back how it was when we were dating, right?
Right. And I think that even this is one of those areas where we go back to those priorities, right? You know, as we approach physical intimacy, as we approach sex, am I there to get something for myself, or am I there to give you something? You know, and I think that when you approach that physical intimacy trying to get something for yourself, it hurts the relationship. When you approach it trying to give and trying to enhance something for your spouse, I think it enhances and it enriches and it blesses the relationship.
Yeah.
And so again, we come back to this thing about priorities, right? And again, one of the things that has caused a lot of problems is, you know, misordering of priorities. And with sex, it's a really easy one to start prioritizing yourself over your spouse, right? Maybe your own hang-ups, your own wants, your own desires, your own whatever. Fine, communicate them with your spouse, okay? But realize that it's not for you to go out and get for yourself. It's about building something together. And this is a very special and I think truly sacred relationship that you build together.
Well, and another thing, I think, I keep losing my train of thought, but it's all, I know it's good stuff. You can keep going.
Well, I was actually going to kind of maybe move on from talking about sex. I think that we've covered it pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the one thing that I was going to say is, one of the things that I heard a lot before we got married, and I've heard a lot through the years, is people talking about the need for sexual compatibility, right? And well, I mean, you've got to have some experience, or else you won't be able to do sex right when you get married, and all this other kind of stuff. And a lot of this is given as kind of a reason for why you really need to move in with a person before you get married. And look, you were a virgin when we got married. So was I. Neither of us had any experience with sex. And look, guys, it's not that hard to figure out. Sexual compatibility, that's where you're prioritizing your own self. That's where you're saying, well, I'm not getting what I want. Not really regarding the other person and their needs. The question is, are you giving your spouse what is helping them? Are you helping your spouse to feel loved? That doesn't mean you need to give into every depraved fantasy or whatever else. We're not going to get too much into all of that kind of stuff. But it's not about you. It's about your spouse. And when you have the right mindset, when you have the right set of priorities, when you approach it with intentionality, then you can have a wonderful and a highly enriching sex life that will just enhance and improve all other aspects of your marriage. The emotional part, the spiritual part, the everyday life part, all of it. And so, I say that sex is really important. It's a vital part of a good marriage. And it's not something that just happens. It's something you have to work at. If you're not getting what you feel is enriching or whatever, then you work at it with your spouse. And this is one of those topics, especially in a religious sense, we kind of skirt by. We don't talk about it because it feels kind of dirty, and nobody really wants to think about two people doing something. It's kind of gross, and that's why we send our daughter away. But it really is one of those vital things, and it is kind of difficult to, because it is kind of that taboo, kind of that gross factor. This is one of those things that is kind of hard to teach your children.
Yeah.
I think we're still figuring out how to have those conversations with our kids.
Yeah.
But it is highly important, and maybe the way you do it is just by showing your kids healthy ways of interacting with each other, with intimacy and other things. Sometimes when you're in the kitchen working, I'll just give you a hug and a kiss.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I'll come over and scratch your back, or, something else. Some kind of a touch, some kind of a physical contact that tells you that I love you.
Yeah, except my parents did that sometimes, and that didn't help me.
Okay. I don't know. I'm still figuring this out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to pass this along to our kids. Maybe it's just with the priorities thing, and then let them figure it out. And, here's another thing. All right, slight tangent. I'll only be here for a second, then we're going to go back on track, okay? If you teach your children correct principles about how to interact, how to manage a marriage and everything else, you don't have to tell them every little thing that they need to do in life.
Yeah.
Okay? It's okay to let your kids figure some things out for themselves. And at some point, you're going to have to trust them to go out in the world and be people on their own. Because they can't stay with you forever. And it doesn't really matter all the things that you tell them. All the things in the world that you can tell your children are never going to be enough. there's always something else that you wish you would have said to your children, or that you wish they would have heard from you, whatever else. They have to live their own lives, and you have to let them live their own lives. The thing is to arm them with the right principles, the right understanding, the right information on how they can approach the world so that they can make their own decisions. And maybe this is one of those areas where we just need to try and teach them the right principles as much as we can, and then let them figure it out. Help them to understand that there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with sex, which can often kind of be the perception, especially in a religious upbringing, right? That it's a good thing, it's a special thing, it's just a sacred thing, right? So anyway, I'm good just cutting off the conversation about sex right there. You good with that? Is there anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to call Lindy back over here. We're going to continue with the next part, which is this kind of permeates a lot of this other stuff. And that is that love is a choice. Okay? And this is something that I've kind of put together through the years. I kind of put it together while I was serving my mission when I was, 19, 20 years old. But, and Lindy's telling us.
So, maybe
we're at
we
our
need to
10-minute warning.
Yeah, maybe we need to save Love is a Choice for another episode, because there's quite a bit on there.
When we were married in the Oakland, California temple for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? And the ceremony is a little different than the ceremonies that you see on TV.
Yeah.
And the person officiating the ceremony, so before he began, he had a moment that he could kind of give us a little bit of advice for marriage. So anyway, I don't know if this is necessarily an official part of it. I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
He felt like it was a good opportunity, and he felt like there was a little bit of advice, and he felt prompted by the Spirit to give us the advice that he said, if you don't ever consider divorce an option, then it never will be. Right?
Yes.
And I can see where some people will go, whoa, hold on, man, hold on. And I can see where some of those kinds of complaints and arguments would come in just from looking at my family that I grew up in. Because I've already said that I think my parents should have been divorced. I think that there are some legitimate areas and legitimate circumstances when divorce should very much be an option and is the right thing to do. However, preferable to any time that divorce comes up as an option, like I also said with my parents, that really the best thing for my parents would be for them to both change. To
put their priorities straight?
Straighten out their priorities, exactly. And to go through that repentance process, and that would be preferable. The only time divorce really comes in as a legitimate option, I think, is when you have people who are refusing to actually follow through on that repentance process. And that repentance process, for those who are irreligious, for those who are atheists or whatever, is really nothing more than just the process of changing. Right? Sometimes you have to take a long, hard look at yourself and say, dude, you done screwed up. Sometimes you got to look at yourself and you got to say, you know what? You are not really doing so hot yourself. It's easy to look at your spouse and say all that kind of stuff. It's harder to look at yourself and say that kind of stuff. But sometimes that is exactly what needs to happen. And that's kind of where repentance comes in. It comes in through being able to look at yourself and say, I have really screwed up. I need to change. There are a lot of things that I've done wrong. and I'm going to stop that. I'm going to do things differently. I think that divorce represents an inability or an unwillingness, one or the other, maybe both, to take that self-examination and to make those changes. And when you don't consider divorce to be an option, then you have a couple options left. You can either, one, try to bury your problems and just keep living and whatever, and, well, I just need to keep going forward for the sake of going forward. Mm-hmm. Or you can do that self-examination and actually try to improve things. I think that the simply trying to move forward for the sake of moving forward is wrong. That's basically what happens when you have an abusive situation and the husband or the wife. So it's not always an abusive husband with an abused wife. Sometimes it's the other way around. It's not always a cheating husband. Sometimes it's a cheating wife, right? Either side can be wrong in it. And whatever the problem is, it is fixable, I think, if the person is willing to really fix it, really change, really repent. And I mean really, like, sincerely. And when you don't consider divorce to be an option, then you have to be willing to look at yourself and say, maybe I'm the problem. And I think that that's really where that comes in. Don't accept the divorce as an option. Don't even consider divorce to be an option. Consider the only option to be, I need to do better. Yeah, is kind of how I look at it.
That's not the option, so you have to consider what your other, like you're saying, what can be done to make this situation better. You have to work through.
Yeah. It's not about just burying things down and ignoring.
Yeah.
That's how abusers continue to abuse. That's how bad situations continue. That's how cheaters continue to cheat.
Yes.
By just burying things and ignoring them. And that's how people get into horrible situations that then divorce becomes the only option, because nobody ever did anything to fix it when there was the chance to fix it.
But I will say those aren't the only situations where people might, we've never been in an abusive situation.
That's true.
But we have considered divorce.
Well, we've been in situations where we
didn't consider it together. We just be like...
where we just didn't see a way out.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how we were going to get out of our problem.
Yeah.
And we feared that maybe divorce was the only option left.
Yeah.
Would that be a better way of stating it?
Yes.
At no point have you or I approached the other and said, I think we need a divorce.
Yeah.
But there have been times when we've had problems and we didn't know how to survive.
Yeah.
With a marriage intact. A lot of it came from saying, okay, divorce is not an option. Mm-hmm. So the only option is to improve things, to make things better. How do we make things better? If you have in your mind, well, I can just get divorced, I can escape, it kind of stops the creativity for finding those ways to improve, those ways to make it better, right? And sometimes it takes creative solutions. Mm-hmm. Always it takes swallowing your own pride. Always it takes being willing to take your pointing finger and turning it right around at yourself. It only takes one person to ruin a marriage. But it takes two people to fix a marriage.
Yeah. Yes.
And although, maybe there's one spouse who's cheating, who's abusive, who's doing some very clearly unacceptable things, that person may hold a lot of the blame, a lot of the fault. But really, when you look deeper into it, there's usually fault to go all around.
Oh, yeah.
In any kind of a situation. Very rarely is one side entirely innocent.
Yeah.
There have been situations that I've known of. Somebody was cheating, and then the other person, maybe they weren't cheating, but they were doing other things that were kind of not right. They weren't really acting in full good faith themselves. And maybe they were doing some things, maybe it was kind of a retaliatory thing. Well, you're cheating on me, so I'm going to do this thing for myself. And as soon as you start throwing yourself into it, acting in selfish manners, that's when it's all going to fall apart. Not considering marriage or considering divorce as an option, I think, is a big part of always considering the other person and keeping yourself out of it, right? Our marriage isn't about me, and it isn't about you. It's about us.
Yeah.
And that's where the solutions come from. So if you want to send us hate mail for that, please send it to... No, I'm not going to tell you our address.
We definitely will need a third episode.
Yes, we are definitely going to need a third episode. Sorry, guys. Jeez, I thought we'd get this done in 2, but...
So we should move on to our cookies.
Yeah, let's eat some cookies. We've talked enough for today.
Yes.
All right, so today's cookies, we've just got some palmiers from Reina's... What is it? Reina's Panaderia or Bakery?
I don't know. I think it's actually bakery, but they all speak Spanish in
there.
Yeah,
it's a Mexican panaderia, and they have got some really excellent Mexican sweetbread and stuff like that. It's one of my favorites around the Kansas City area. Again, we have no sponsorship agreements with anybody at all. At all. None. Okay. We just really like this bakery. So anyway, let's stop talking and let's get eating some cookies.
Oh, it's hard to break it. That's how these are though.
And palmiers are always good. It's basically puff pastry and sugar. Super not complicated at all. But yeah, these have got like a ton of sugar on them actually. And these are very sweet and
very crunchy.
Very crunchy, very light and airy as they should be. This would be really good dipped in like some Mexican hot chocolate or cinnamon tea. Yeah.
I mean, not today because it's hot, but...
Oh, I don't even care.
Well, that's true. You've been drinking tea, the herbal tea. I think we're going to sign off for now. Thanks so much for joining us on Life, Death, and Cookies. And I'm not sure when we're going to get to that third marriage episode, but you'll see it sometime in the episode list.
I'd like to try and get it for our next episode.
Okay. So yeah, if you could like and subscribe and leave a review, whatever, we're going to have this on YouTube, but we'll also have these
in an audio-only format.
On podcasts, your favorite podcast listening site, whatever that is. So,
please share. I hope that what we've said is helpful to you. I hope that we've shared some things that are beneficial to anybody who chooses to listen. And yeah, like you said, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to spending a little bit more time with you next time. And we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.